I'm Nicola Talent, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com. Ali, we're going to talk about something that happened in Hungary in November 2024, the involvement of an Irish suspect in that and where this case is at. So bring us back to then. Budapest, was it?
Yeah, it was Budapest in Hungary, yeah. So it was November 2024, so early November, and a young American woman, Mackenzie Michalski, she was 31 years of age. She was a neurosurgery nurse over in the States. I think she's from Buffalo, living in Oregon. And she had a huge interest in traveling. She traveled a lot with her friends and her family. And she was in Budapest and she met an Irishman in a nightclub. They appeared to have gone back to his rented accommodation. Something clearly went wrong. She ended up dead in that apartment. And he concealed her body in a suitcase overnight after the night they met, and dumped her body in a lake about 140 kilometres away after driving in his rented car, dumping her remains. Yes.
So we're not going to identify him because he's the suspect in the case. There's a trial coming up. There's a pre-trial hearing coming up, and then the trial is expected to be over the kind of coming months, really, is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know because we don't know that sister, Nicola, so I'm not sure. So there has been one pre-trial hearing already in December, and there's a second one now next month in February. That's just for one day. And after that's concluded, the judge will decide. I mean, you'd have to presume it wouldn't be too many more months after.
For
February,
sure. You know? And we can't identify him by name, but do you know a little bit about him or how he came to be in Budapest? Was he living there? Or?
I think he's 38 now. So I think he was 37 when this murder happened 14 months ago. He seems to travel a lot for work and he appears to work in marketing. So I think that's all we can say legally at this point.
Okay.
At the moment.
And was the meeting in the nightclub prearranged? Is there a suggestion that this was a Tinder date or did they just happen to bump into one another?
No, I think they just bumped into one another and there's CCTV of them together.
Yeah.
And she appears to have, willingly gone back to his apartment. And he has since said to police that, they engaged in kind of consensual sex. And after that, that's where we don't know what happened.
Yeah. He
has admitted to killing her. He has said it was an accident and that it happened during sex, and that essentially she had asked him, he claims, to get involved in kind of S&M practices, tying each other up, things like that. And that during the course of that activity, something went wrong and she accidentally died.
Well, that could be somewhat acceptable had he not stuffed her body into a suitcase and driven 150 kilometres and buried or dumped her in a lake. So yes. How does this all come to light? Do her parents report her missing or what happens?
So her friend, she was travelling with her friend in Budapest and she was due to fly home the next day. It was the end of the holiday. So her friend reported her missing when she didn't come back to the Airbnb. A huge, big manhunt was launched. Obviously, her family in America were notified. And this would have been very out of character for her. She kind of was because she was such a well-seasoned traveller. She was very meticulous about travelling, her parents said. She would have planned out everything. And it was really unusual for her not to be in touch at all. So they set up a Facebook page to help find Mackenzie. And I think that had over 4,000 people within 48 hours out looking for her. The police managed to track CCTV and they found, that she went back
her leaving this nightclub with this guy.
With this man, yeah. And then after after she died in his rented apartment, he appears to have left the next morning, bought a suitcase, came back, sadly put her dead remains into that suitcase, put it into his car, travelled.
And did they track him all the way with CCTV and various things, or did he admit?
It was when he got back, he was already back by the time he was well back. It was a day or two later.
Yeah.
And he was arrested.
So the police were sort of caught up with him within a couple of days.
Oh yeah,
really.
it was very quick.
And does he then tell them where to find her body?
Yeah, he went back with them.
Right.
And showed them the spot.
Right. And what was his explanation for that?
That hasn't come out yet in court.
Yeah.
We're hoping more will come out in court next month. He has had a few things to say in court, like just that it was accidental. And I think that that's something that's not accepted by the prosecution. Like he's been charged with murder. And because it's a different court system over there, Nicola, I'm just not quite sure of how it all works. But he was offered a 12-year sentence if he admitted to killing her. He has rejected that. And he appears to be trying to fight these charges. So that's why we're going to a full trial, hopefully within a few months. But next.
So the next plea hearing, as they call it, is going to be about what? Do you even know?
So it's another pre-trial.
Pre-trial hearing.
So it's going to apparently it's going to be medical witnesses called on about his mental state. That's what I've been told.
Right.
So there's going to be, I think, up to 5 different medics who I presume have assessed this man.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like on the face of it, it doesn't seem like rational behaviour whatsoever to dispose of someone's body in that manner. But until we actually hear what comes out in court, it's really difficult to know, what'll happen. I do know that like the family went to the last one, her parents Jill and her dad Bill, they're lovely people.
You've been in touch with them?
Yeah, and they're really, really nice people, and they've a son as well, Nicholas, and they're really kind of close-knit family of 4. They were a close-knit family of 4. And they're obviously completely devastated by this, and they're also really upset by the things he has said in court. What he's claimed about their daughter, which they don't accept on any level. That what he has described whatsoever. So they came face to face with him for the first time in December, and I think that was a very difficult moment for them. He was kind of shackled; his legs and his hands were in chains. And
so he's been in custody ever since, has he?
Ever since, yeah, he hasn't got out whatsoever. And he kind of mumbled, they said to me he kind of mumbled into the microphone. And even though he was obviously speaking English and they're obviously English speaking, they could still barely hear him, and it still had to be interpreted what he was saying. But he said things like, "It's been a year. I've been thinking about this for over a year since I've been in prison, and I wish I hadn't done what she asked me to do. I wish I hadn't gotten involved in that kind of sexual activity with her that led to her death." I'm paraphrasing a bit there. That's in essence what he said. And that's, and that it was an accident. But he was essentially laying the blame on her.
On her, yeah.
So that's been really hard for them to hear. And I think it's obviously being refuted by the prosecution, by the state as well.
So what do her parents, Jill and Bill Michalski, say about her, and what's her background?
So she was 31, and she was kind of a very high achiever.
Is she older or younger than Nicholas, her brother?
Nicholas is younger, yeah. So she's the oldest child. I think she graduated high school a year early. She was kind of very intelligent. She was a nurse, and she specialised in neurosurgery. So I think that's a very kind of high pressure nursing role. I think you need to study for quite a number of years, and you'd be involved in operations where you really are. They said to me, she was literally saving people's lives. That's where she wanted to be, in the A&E, saving people's lives. Someone who went above and beyond for her patients. Would check in with people when her shifts were finished to see how operations had gone. And I think by the thousands of people who joined the Facebook group to help find her, kind of show the level of regard people had. She was just really well known in her local community in Oregon, where she lived, and then where she was from as well, in Buffalo. And she loved to travel, and she loved to kind of live life. And it was so tragically kind of
such a shock for them.
Such a shock, yeah. And yeah, I think they're just obviously still grieving so deeply. And
And very difficult to try and negotiate all of that court stuff. I mean, if you're doing it in your hometown with people you know and all the rest of it, but to try and do it across the other side of the world into Hungary, a country where, as you say, we don't really know how the court practices work, and even trying to cover it is difficult enough. You're trying to keep up with the dates that it's due on and all the rest of it. But they are they doing sort of media stuff in the US as well? Is it a high profile case there?
Well,
the States is kind of odd. Things like this can happen, and
States is odd, and it's
won't be even reported.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many murders.
Ooh.
I think they've done some kind of local press in the States.
Just in our memory, really, I suppose.
Yeah, like they've held a number of memorials, and the press in Hungary. There was some reports after court in December. There was kind of court reports, and I've interviewed them a few times. So I think I'm the only person in Ireland so far to interview them. You know?
And it was due to be her birthday in recent weeks.
Yeah, she would have been 33.
Right.
Yeah, she would have been 33.
Yeah.
But it's there's so much interest in this Irishman as well.
Exactly.
I mean, this isn't some kind of one punch attack. These cases we see a lot of them overseas as well. Actually, this is something very different. Seems just particularly sinister.
Yeah.
As well, and he seems to be kind of a very middle class professional Irishman who travelled a lot for work. But what could lead to that series of events is it's quite shocking,
And we will certainly, as you are hoping to go and cover it in full, and at which point you can identify who this suspect is, you will. But we obviously have to follow the laws in the meantime.
Yeah.
But we'll certainly be coming back to this, and the details of it are going to be fascinating, no doubt.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's one to keep an eye on for sure.
Obviously, there's kind of throwbacks to the minute you hear about S&M and all this sort of stuff. We go back to Graham Dwyer,
Yeah, I mean,
and the details of that case, and
where my head went. Yeah,
immediately.
We obviously covered that. Yeah,
and somebody who was living an ordinary life, was married with children, was holding down a job, but had this very dark, secretive world that many people were lured into, including his victim, Elaine O'Hara. What's happening with Graham Dwyer? He's gone a little bit quiet, or is it just?
I don't think he's any. I think he's all is legal.
He's all finished with all that, but he had a lot of women contacting him.
He did.
And a lot of strange people who wanted to be part of his world, and
well, they always come out of the woodwork.
I thought it was amazing with him that he was able to present himself in this very ordinary, middle class way, until the day the cops came and arrested him and he was brought to the station, and the mask just fell completely, and it never went back up again, even though there was a trial. He pleaded not guilty to what had happened. The detail of that, a lot of the what had gone on between himself and Elaine O'Hara was in sort of emails between them and texts and all the rest of it, but he never. It was like as if he accepted his
like he was waiting for it all to come falling
down.
Yeah,
or the pressure of it.
Maybe he just felt so confident he was still able to get away with it, even as.
But I mean, I remember when he was found guilty that time, because I was in court and I went into Today FM to do an interview with Matt Cooper, and as we were on air talking about it, this statement came in from Graham Dwyer's, from Graham Dwyer essentially. He wanted to thank his legal team, and he wanted to ask for privacy for his family at that time and everything. I'd never come across a convicted murderer releasing a statement.
Yeah.
And it was like, everybody, there's nothing more to see here now. Please leave my family alone. I want to move on with my life in jail, my life sentence. And of course, then he goes into jail and he starts to communicate with some strange ladies that are coming in to see him, and he sort of, that sinisterness, he just, the person he really was just came out. And I mean, members of his family, I think, are probably still, what would you do with that?
Everyone completely respected their privacy, as you would. Because obviously it wasn't absolutely nothing to do with them. Nobody ever bothered his now ex-wife for obviously the children as well. But yeah, no, he's still in the Midlands. He's still
doing his time.
I think there's a couple of women have been barred from going in to see him as well. I don't think the prison authorities like kind of, people going in for the wrong reasons if it's not someone he had a long-standing friendship with,
But there's sort of echoes, immediately when you hear about that. And the details of this case will come out in the trial. And maybe there's absolutely nothing. And maybe perhaps, while the Hungarian authorities are charging this Irishman with murder, he is denying it. We'll have to hear both sides of that story.
Yeah, well,
the court will have to decide.
I mean, he's not denying
killing her.
Death.
Yeah.
But he's saying it was an accident.
Yeah, he's saying it wasn't murder.
It's an entirely different case, like system over there, like we were saying, like a press photographer can go into court and take his photograph.
In the courtroom.
It just has to be pixelated. And I saw some of the pixelated photos of him ran in the Hungarian press. And like, it was barely a pixelation.
Okay.
Like you couldn't make out his face, but like it was.
Yeah, if you knew him, you might be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he looks like a very kind of fit,
I think pixelations, I mean, with AI and everything, surely there's some method that you can depixelate something
there must
nowadays.
Be,
there must be.
I
wouldn't have thought it was the most modern form of security these days.
I'm not sure what the prisons are like over there either. Like, are they difficult places to be locked up, or are they similar to Ireland? I mean, the fact when I saw the chains on his arms and legs made me think of a prison maybe that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Fundamental, I suppose. Like not a modern facility, it reminded me of a very old-fashioned.
I meant to ask you just before we finish up on this story that there was some testimony that was read into the court, and you have it, do you?
Yeah, so the indictment stated that he tied Mackenzie's hands with the trouser belt, then assaulted her, hit her on the hands and chest, bit her upper arm, and then squeezed her until she suffocated. And I think squeezed essentially means strangled in this instance. And his response was, I maintain my testimony that I made during the police investigation. Over the past year, I've had a lot of time to think about what happened in detail. And I realised that it shouldn't have led me to do the sadomasochistic, thank you, activities at the girl's request. Everything like this happened at the girl's request. What happened was an accident.
And of course, the girl is dead and can't speak for herself.
But I think it's fair to say that this is rejected entirely. This account is rejected entirely.
By her family.
And I suppose by the prosecutors.
Exactly.
He has been charged with murder.
Okay, well, we'll definitely come back to this, and as soon as we get some more information on it. So thank you very much, Ali Bracken.
Thanks a million. Thanks, Nicola.
If you're a crimeworld.com subscriber, you've probably already binged on our latest exclusive podcast series, The Regency 10 Years On, from the hit that changed gangland forever. This 6-part anniversary special revisits that fateful day when David Byrne was shot dead at the Northside Hotel, igniting a bloody feud between the Kinahan and Hutch gangs, one of the deadliest rivalries in Irish history. Here's a taste of the new series, exclusive to crimeworld.com subscribers. So that Friday was one of those really quiet days. I mean, we all knew that Daniel Kinahan was in Dublin for the Clash of the Clans Boxing Way, and at least we knew he was due into Dublin the next day. That Clash of the Clans match had been heavily advertised, but the day itself there was just little going on.
So there was very little happening that day. It's February. It's kind of a quiet enough time for news in general. And Alan Cherry and Ernie Leslie were on the road. They were at another story actually in Finglas.
What was that? Do you remember?
Well, it was one of these classic sort of district court stories where a guy had, I think some teenagers had thrown stones at his car and he got out and slapped the teenager. Always great kind of human stories because some people feel sorry for the teenagers and some people don't. And so Alan had been out there, but the guy had moved on. He'd called out to his house to see if he wanted to talk. He'd moved on, he wasn't there. And we discussed going to the Regency earlier. And I said, look, just go along. And see what happens. Divert there. We obviously weren't expecting anything. And obviously that point of Alan being there would be the subject of conspiracy. But we'll get into that at a later point.
For sure. So it was a case really that day of, one thing hadn't worked out, so go to the next. But also there was definitely a general sense of, if we could be there, just in case.
Yes, and as you said, to see who was standing beside the Kinahans and who wasn't from that bigger organised crime group. So Alan and Ernie went out. I got a call. I think you got a call almost simultaneously, but I got a call from Alan. I'd spoken to him earlier on the day saying, see what happens. And he phoned me up and said, there's after being a shooting and I think we've got a picture. And I actually went, yeah, very funny. But of course, he stopped me and said, no, I'm serious. We're after, there's some guys come out with a gun, there's shots fired and there's total and utter chaos. And, our first thought is, get yourself safe. I have to admit, my second thought was, I hope they did get good pictures. But, you're still thinking they have to get safe. I mean, I know you probably got a similar call because Ernie and Alan obviously were in the same Jeep.
And of course, Ernie's the guy taking the photographs,
yes.
So he's on the phone to me. So I actually had gone for a pizza for lunch and I had come back over to the office and the phone rings and it was Ernie. And I answered and he was panicked on the other end of the phone. This was real high octane stuff. And he's still trying to take photos. He's trying to tell me what's happened. He's told me he thinks he's got a good one of one of the shooters as they were running from the scene. He was trying to call up the photograph on the back of his camera.
Yeah.
Because it would have taken him a while to get it onto a screen, but he'd also sent it into the office.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he was kind of in the middle of doing a number of things. And as I was on the phone to him from memory, the photograph came into the office and we put it up on the big screen. And it was clear to see that this wasn't just one of the shooters as he suspected, but it was two. One of them was dressed as a woman.
Which is, of course, there was also this confusing story about guards coming in with weapons, and obviously we know now that they weren't ERU guys, they were guys dressed as them. But Alan was telling me this, there was talk of these guards, and then obviously there was, the crowd fleeing from the scene. So it was all confusing. But as you said, Ernie had taken a picture of the back of his camera. People will know what the photographer's cameras look like, and they have a little digital screen. So you don't see it in great detail. But we knew this is a once-in-a-lifetime photograph has been gotten.
Yeah, as soon as it came in. And of course, look, the newsrooms aren't as busy as they used to be. They used to be very busy, buzzy places with phones ringing everywhere. And it felt like a proper newsroom that day. I remember everybody's phone was going. People were hearing little bits about it. The news was starting to break about it. And of course, we were there sitting in the office with this photo. There's that sort of news sense in you that you want to run this.
Yeah.
And at the time, we weren't putting stuff up online. This would have been held for the paper on the Sunday. And this is a Friday afternoon. We had something really special here. But we also, I think, knew the guards were going to be desperate for that picture because they were two gunmen running from a scene of a crime. So it was a very compromised situation and there was a bit of arguments going on and there was voices were raised.
Totally. I mean, because it is complex. I mean, normally the journalism likes to keep itself separate from the Gardaí investigations. So Garda investigations go on and journalism reports on them. But obviously then you're put in this compromising position because you have guys running out visibly with handguns in their hands. And, they're obviously then disappeared into the ether. And you have to have a discussion about what is your civic responsibility in terms of, do you help the guards? You don't want these armed gunmen to run down the street and kill another few people. So it was a complex one, and people were aware straight away that the guards are going to want these pictures and want to use it for their purposes. And we also have our purposes, which is to tell what happened and to report on the news. So there was a conflict straight away.
From my memory, as the afternoon went on and I was talking to contacts and to other people who were involved in crime journalism, etc., it became apparent that there were no guards at the weigh-in. That in actual fact, the guards didn't seem to be there at all. They were called literally by the hotel and had arrived in response to what had already gone on. Of course, David Byrne had been shot dead in the reception of the hotel. We were getting photographs in later in the day, which showed a very shocked-looking Liam Byrne standing outside the hotel, his hands in his pockets, standing beside his cousin Liam Rowe, another significant cartel member. There was no sign of Daniel Kinahan. I was getting calls from people who were telling me that these professional killers had been flown into the country and had already been flown out. There was rumours, there was spin, and also there was the general, I suppose, conversations in regards to, oh my God, what is going to happen next? I mean, all anyone knew for sure was something was going to happen. David Byrne was a very, very senior lieutenant. He was also from criminal royalty from the Byrne family. His brother-in-law is Thomas Bomber Kavanagh. You know, his brother is Liam Byrne, and he's very much at the heart of the Kinahan cartel. We knew from the beginning that this attack had occurred as part of the rivalry between the Kinahan and Hutch factions of what was once the one organisation. And I think everybody was really trying to predict what this might lead to, but nobody could have guessed.
Nobody could have guessed. And of course, those rumours straight away went around. It was straight away focused on the Hutch gang. But at this time, if you remember, while there had been other incidents, for example, an attempted hit on Jerry Hutch in Lanzarote, it wasn't, those incidents weren't always public. People were straight away thinking this isn't the type of normal organised crime operation. They were looking at the weapons, saying, is there a paramilitary organisation involved here? Nobody knew fully. And of course, what people did fear straight away was, no matter what, people knew how big and how powerful the Kinahans had become, and the likelihood of them not striking back was inevitable. That blood was going to flow.
That bit absolutely 100%. But at that very early stage, I recall contacts of mine suggesting that the Hutches were an army. Did they have the backing of the dissidents? Was this going to, were they going to be very heavily armed because of that? They had contacts in the north. It was like as if people were trying to size up how two Premiership teams were going to play against one another. That's what it felt like. You've been listening to an extract from The Regency, 10 years on from the hit that changed gangland forever. Visit crimeworld.com and subscribe to hear the full series now. And you'll also get exclusive access to our other podcast deep dives on the Dapper Don, Christy Kinahan, Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, and more.